influencing the election. I'm opening up the assessment description right here. On Monday's class, I went over how I did part one of the assignment. My current event is the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. I explained the articles that I used to give a brief explanation of what's going on and all the historical context you need to know that's gone into this moment and why it's being talked about the way it's being talked about. And then I used All Sides to choose an opinion piece from a left-leaning media source and to explain how the political left is talking about this event. And I used All Sides to find an opinion piece on right-leaning media to find out how the political right or conservatives are talking about this. Today, what I'd like to show you is how I finished my presentation by completing part two. This is the section that focuses on how this current event or topic is being talked about in social media. And it asks you to pick two social media influencers from both sides, how they've reacted to this event, and explain your reactions. So I'm going to show you that now. Another little thing you can probably see is I'm writing everything that I'm going to say in my speaker notes so that I could be graded by someone who didn't even see my presentation on everything that I know on this topic. All this information, especially for part one, I just copied and pasted over from my planning tool. But let me just start this presentation at part two, which is slide 6 for me. First, I'm going to click present. And on Monday, we're going to show you how to do this where you only present the presentation. But I'm going to show you today what my view will look like, which will be the same as your view when you are presenting, where you can also have your speaker notes available to you. But there's a way to do this where you share screen, and the only screen you're sharing is the browser tab that has the presentation in it. And then what you're looking at is your speaker notes. But the people who are in the call with you can't see the speaker notes. Okay, so here we go. Part two of the presentation is I'd like to discuss this nomination as it's playing out in social media. And I'm going to do that by talking about two powerful influencers. In order to select the influencers I'd like to focus on, I just pulled from a library that was curated by Mr. Laporto, and to see how people are talking about replacing Ginsburg and Amy Coney Barrett. Tucker Carlson is a commentator for Fox News who uses his Twitter platform primarily to embed videos from his TV show and influence people into supporting the conservative agenda. In this tweet, which says, part 1 of 2, Amy Coney Barrett represents everything that makes our country great, therefore they despise her, and it includes a video of his discussing this. In this tweet, Carlson is invoking his audience's belief in what is known as American exceptionalism, or the belief that America is unusually extraordinary in comparison with other countries of the world. This, combined with the sentiment that America has lost its way, is one of the main things that drove Trump to power, but it's also, generally speaking, how most conservative politicians speak. The key idea is that liberals want to change what makes America, America, and here Carlson is claiming Amy Coney Barrett is a perfect example of what makes America great. She believes in traditional values, she's pro-life, and isn't one of those feminist women that's trying to tear down the patriarchy. The tweet is an example of ethos because the appeal is to a shared value that his audience is supposed to share that as good Americans they should believe in. Also implicit in this tweet is an appeal to build trust in Barrett as a strong example of greatness, which is also ethos. So the focus on trust this person, the focus on she shares this value of greatness is an ethos appeal. My reaction. This quote doesn't fully resonate with me. I believe that people like Barrett are what make this country unsafe for people who have less power or are already oppressed. The so-called strong beliefs that they hold are actually grounded in heteronormative, patriarchal, and white supremacist beliefs. On the other hand, I do admire that the Supreme Court is made up of a small group of people with so much power who usually do what their conscience tells them to do rather than what politicians have appointed them to do. I just disagree with Carlson that it's unique to Democrats to hate justices who do things differently than whatever their political party's agenda is. Uh, and in a game of rock paper scissors, I think logos almost always beats the other two because it's harder to argue against logic. So I might try replying to this tweet with a reply that says something like, um, which of these things that progressive liberals are fighting for to end are you suggesting make America great? And I could have like an embedded link that kind of captures all the atrocities that are a part of America's past as it relates to the subjugation of women, LGBTQ folks, and white supremacy and racism in general. So the idea there would be like, you think America's great. Which of these things do you think are so great about America? Because they all would have to be things that liberals are fighting to end. On the other side, this is a tweet that comes from Patton Oswalt, who's a comedian who uses his platform to tell jokes, but also to influence followers into supporting the liberal agenda. You can see the tweet says, best part of this is that the GOP senator who asked her this was this was a GOP senator or a Republican senator who asked her the softball. And the embedded tweet there says Amy Coney Barrett doesn't know the 5 freedoms guaranteed in the First Amendment. In this retweet, it's an example of him reacting to people like Tucker Carlson or the USA Today article that I mentioned in part 1 of my presentation, who believes so much in the ethos of Barrett and her credibility as a judge. Those conservatives are gleeful to finally have a justice nominee and a powerful Republican being talked about in the media who's supposed to apparently really know her stuff. And it's like a strong contrast to many other powerful Republicans right now, like, for example, Donald Trump. It's an effective use of logos and ethos, I think, this tweet. It's logos because it follows logically that if someone's an expert on the Constitution, then they should be able to list the 5 freedoms that are included in the First Amendment. The fact that she can't seems to logically undermine the assumption that this is an expert or a really intelligent judge. It's also ethos because it's intended to impact or rip into how conservatives are talking about her credibility, her authority, and her trustworthiness. The tweet resonates with me because it speaks to the hypocrisy that I see all the time from conservatives. Barrett is supposed to be the smart Republican. I often wonder how people who are intelligent and know so much could support policies that hurt so many people. I get that she might be religious, but I'm skeptical of why she doesn't seem to support a woman's right to control her own body. And it does seem like our beliefs diverge. Oh, wait, actually, I'm sorry. That's a mistake in my speaker notes. From the news story I saw, it seems like she's very vague whenever Democrats try to ask how she'd rule on Roe versus Wade and things like the Affordable Care Act. And conservatives celebrate her for this vagueness. And they even point to the fact that Ginsburg did the same thing by refusing to indicate how she was going to rule on important cases in 1993. But I think the examples are fundamentally different. Barrett was given examples of horrific things that are happening in America due to COVID-19, and then she was asked point blank if she'd take away people's rights to health care. And she refused to answer those questions. That's different than what Ginsburg was doing in 1993, because Ginsburg at the time was refusing to make her office become a political one, which is a little bit different than saying, like, what are you going to do about these human rights violations, essentially? So that concludes part 2 of my presentation and my presentation in general. At this point, as presenters, you would thank your audience and open it up for questions that people might have. Okay, I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to stop this presentation, and I'm going to actually open it up to your questions.